spirit of America, the link between faith and freedom, and the true history of our founding fathers. That's the topic of today's Golden Blunt. I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Do you know one of the biggest reasons our nation is facing this crisis of rising socialism, which is to say Marxism, which is to say communism? A big reason is because civics is not taught in our public high schools any longer. And where civics is taught, it's usually taught in a manner that puts America as the blame, as the responsible party for all that ails, for all that goes wrong in America and around the world. Can you say Barack Obama apology tour? That's the product of poor civics training in the public school system. And before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network. That's the faith-based news outreach of Calvary Chino Chapel Hills Church in California, led by Pastor Jack Hibbs. Pastor Jack Hibbs, who oh so kindly wrote the foreword to my latest nonfiction book, God-Given or Bust, Defeating Marxism and Saving America with Biblical Truths, which I mention because it ties into today's episode about the link between faith and freedom. You can't have true liberty without people of faith. Why? Because people not of faith take their marching orders from their own hearts and minds, whatever the winds dictate, whatever the whim, whatever the will of the day. But when people have faith in something higher, a creator, like Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, endowed by our creator with certain unalienable rights. It goes on and so forth and so on. But those who believe that rights and liberties come from a creator understand simultaneously that there is a concept of individual accountability in an afterlife. So they are more prone to self-govern, to rein in the fleshly behaviors that those who take their marching orders from their own hearts and minds and wills engage in and label as correct, label as proper, right? The heart is deceptively wicked. And if you follow your heart instead of the laws of God and wills of God, then you're headed down a wrong path. You're headed down a path that is open to satanic deception. So where was I? Oh yes, I was mentioning that Pastor Jack Hibbs oh so kindly wrote the foreword to my latest nonfiction book, God-Given or Bust, Defeating Marxism and Saving America with Biblical Truths. And this book ties into today's episode about faith and freedom and founding fathers and the greatness of America. But back to Bold and Blunt, you may also get it at WashingtonTimes.com, where I would invite you to subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter. It's called Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley, same as my podcast, by the way. And you'll get delivered right to your email box Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the commentaries that I write at the Washington Times, giving you the facts you need to fight the far leftists. And you'll also get my twice weekly Bold and Blunt audio podcast, along with my video versions of Bold and Blunt that I do periodically, with more to come on that, an expansion of my presence at Real Life Network. Very excited about what's coming up. Can't wait to tell you guys all the details, but for now, just know that Bold and Blunt is just in its blossoming days. It's about to get much bigger, so I'm very happy I'm very happy to announce that, at least, and very happy at the direction this podcast is going, in large thanks to you guys for listening. I really do appreciate it, and for sharing. I appreciate that as well. And you can also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. So back to the spirit of America. Do you know how easy it is to just get involved in the politics, the day-to-day, the cultural degradations, and just feel the need to fight back, fight this Marxist takeover of America, fight the Democrat Party, which has really gone down a path of communism, fight the lies and deceptions, fight the open borders, fight the transgender evils and the evils of the entire LGBTQ agenda and community, to forever and forever fight. And this is all well and good, and we've seen some really great gains in our fights since COVID days, I would say. First off, COVID, as despicable as I thought Americans acted under the years of COVID by just ceding so willingly their God-given individual liberties and rights. At the same time, the shiny ray of light at the end of the COVID years produced a huge surge of parental outcries at what was going on in our public school systems, because unions forced the schools to stay shut down because they wanted their teachers to be able to run to the beaches and cut YouTube videos of them dancing in sync on beaches around the world. And so children were forced to stay at home and learn remotely, or really not really learn at all, but pretend to learn remotely. And parents, because many of the parents of America were forced to stay home from work as well, they saw firsthand what their kids were being fed, right? They saw firsthand what their kids' minds were being poisoned with in the public school system, and parents rose up. They rose back and fought back, and they started winning seats on school boards, and they started demanding that the administrators and school board officials listen to parents, and they started fighting back against the Joe Biden overreach that started labeling parents as subversives for doing the work of parenting, no less. Remember when the Justice Department under Joe Biden started sending out memos? I can't remember if the memos were open or if they were discovered on the sly, but to be alert to what goes on at school board meetings, because parents were rising up and taking back their parental authorities, and Democrats can't have that, so they had to sick the big heavy hand, the big black boots of the Joe Biden Justice Department, weaponized as it was, on parents. And we saw that, and so that was a ray of light that came from COVID. And then we've seen under the latest election, the conservatives, they won the White House, they won the House, they won the Senate. I shouldn't say they, I should say we, right? And Donald Trump came in to the White House ready to lead this time. He surrounded himself with a spectacular team of hard-charging, determined, dogged pit bull fighters of the same vein as himself. And here we are coming on budget season and continuing resolution debacle and Schumer's shutdown and all that. And this president, as we'll see, but I suspect we will see this president standing strong and shutting down the Democrats. And it's hard to ignore the political world and the cultural decay that goes along with the political world, because politics is downstream of culture, right? And it's hard to not get in the fight and every day wake up refreshed, renewed, revigorated, and reinvigorated, and ready to fight again. But lost in all the sometimes exhausting and fatiguing fights, right, is the good stuff about America. Because in political elections, right, who wins? It's not the candidate that is always pointing out how bad the other candidate is, right, Hillary Clinton. It's the candidate who can sell something that makes people's hearts soar, if only for a little bit, right? It's the candidate who can sell, sad to say, hope and change, even without having any type of principled hope and change agenda to go along with those lofty words, right? I speak of Barack Obama, but Barack Obama won because he didn't have any principles, he didn't have any platforms, he didn't have anything specific, but he had hope and he had change, and that was enough to sway voters to elect him. So sometimes we have to sit back from the fight and remember, instead of winning all the fights, instead of fighting all the time, maybe sometimes it would be better to sidestep a bit and sell the good news about America, because America is exceptional. And what makes America exceptional is the fact that we take our rights as individuals and our liberties as individuals from God. We're born into them. We breathe them. We breathe them in. We breathe them out. They just are. That's the default position in America for the individual, that you are born with rights and freedoms. And if government wants to take them, government has to prove to you as an individual why that taking is necessary. It's not the other way around like it is in all the other nations of the world, where government is the default position of power, where government holds the key to rights and liberties and gives and takes as government wills. That's not in America. In America, it's you and me and our neighbors and everybody on the street, that the default position is we all have God-given liberties, God-given rights, among, as the Declaration of Independence points out, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And then, of course, the Constitution picks up from there and lays out specifically where government should not tread. For instance, First Amendment freedoms, right? Second Amendment freedoms. Government should not tread there. These rights are self-evident, and if government wants to take them away, for instance, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, government needs to prove why it's necessary. And really, the individual, the people, have the final say, because it's enshrined in our Constitution, it's enshrined in our DNA, that our rights as individuals are God-given, our liberties as individuals are God-given. And that's something that I would think just transcends politics, whether you're a far leftist or a far far right conservative, or, except for the communists and Marxists, they just need to get the beep out of America, right? They just need to go. I have very little patience with communists and Marxists and socialists because, first off, they're very ignorant. They're very ignorant of humanity. They disregard the soul, the individual soul. They disregard the need for God, and they are all in for government, all in for control, but only if they happen to be the ones who are in control, right? Because they're the ones who know best. So aside from the Marxists and communists and socialists who should just get the beep beep out, like I said, these are things, these are principles that for most average Americans, no matter whether you're Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're independent, it doesn't matter. It's the exceptionalism of America. It's the liberty that is in the air we breathe. It's just, it's in our DNA. And instead of fight, we should fight, but also remind that this is what we're after. We're not after political wins per se. We're after, as I put in my book, the big war is over God-given, right? We're after God-given rights and liberties, and we should all be able to unite on those principles. And maybe as Democrats versus Republicans, we have differences on how we might arrive at that end. We may have slight differences, but in the end, we should all be rooting for God-given or bust, right? Without God-given, we don't have an America. And founding fathers knew this. Founding fathers fought for this. Founding fathers put it all on the line for this. And it's such a shame that in today's public school systems, we really degrade and dishonor the sacrifices and service that founding fathers performed at the forging of this great nation, right? And not just founding fathers, all the colonists, all those who fought in the Revolutionary War, all those who sacrificed and bled on our own soil in order that we might be here today facing the biggest decision in life, being, do I want Starbucks pumpkin spice or Starbucks plain, right? I mean, that's a worry that many Americans wake up to, and that's their biggest concern of the day. But we're at this place in time, we're at the luxury of having a problem over a coffee choice because so many before us gave it all, died, lost loved ones, lost even more loved ones, and maybe not even died, but lost limbs. And can you imagine losing a limb on the battlefield back then? I mean, today you just have all kinds of medical miracles and advances in medicine and painkillers, right? What a blessing that is. But can you imagine back then losing a limb or having to have a leg or an arm amputated because you're wounded? These are things that civics in public school teach, right? And it's a timeout. It's a timeout from the busyness of the politics and culture of the day to reflect on just how very honorable all those who came before were, and their memories still are. Whether we're talking recent sacrifice or at the very, very, very founding of our nation sacrifice. I mean, the Pilgrims, they had it pretty bad, right? Those that came over on the Mayflower. Not any type of luxury cruise on that one, right? And just civics lessons back in school where we're taught the beauty of America, the exceptionalism of America, and where we don't shy about the link between faith and liberty in America. Really, that's something that if the public schools would teach it, that would do away with a lot of the problems we're facing right now. And if we as conservatives in the battle, as I said, instead of just fight, we also remind, that might prod a few minds along the way to sit up and think, hey, I am blessed to be an American, and the reason I am blessed to be an American is because of my God-given liberties and rights that no other nation has or offers or provides. And the reason why I have these God-given rights and liberties is because our founding fathers hashed it out and fought and debated and argued and did the hard work of giving us that system of governance so many years ago. And we're coming up on the 250th, and I have with me a guest today who has a fantastic idea about prodding along the minds of Americans into remembering one of those founding fathers, and not just one of the founding fathers, but the whole founding fathers family, because this is a founding father who had a amazing family. It wasn't just the founding father himself, it was the whole family. Jackie Cushman, I want to thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. It is so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So you have this endeavor to honor not just John Adams, but John Adams and his entire family. Talk a little bit about this Memorial Foundation campaign.
This is a really interesting project. So I am to serve as the chair of the Adams Memorial Commission and the president of the Adams Memorial Foundation, and both entities are working together. The commission is clearly it's a governmental, body that's very small, and we are focused on building the memorial. And then the foundation is a 501c3, a nonprofit that is helping raise both awareness, education, and also raising money for the memorial. But to your point, this is a memorial to be located in Washington, D.C. for Abigail and John Adams, Louisa Catherine and John Quincy Adams, Charles and Henry Adams. So it's a family memorial, which makes it really interesting, but also a little complicated.
Why is it complicated? And really, why isn't there one already? It just seems weird.
I love that question. I mean, we get that question a lot because, until you think about it, you don't realize it. But you're right. Like, we have the Washington, we have the Jefferson, we have the Lincoln, we have the FDR. Eisenhower has one that was done relatively recently. But there is no John Adams or any Adams memorial. So the reason it makes it a little more complicated is because you have to explain to everybody, who are all these people. Clearly, I mean, you know who all these people are. I have learned a lot since I've been involved, but it's a family, and so you have the parents, John and Abigail, and then you have their son, John Quincy Adams, his wife, their child, and grand. So it's just, but to me, it makes it more interesting because as a nation, we're built on family. So it really is a great connection point to talk to people. We're focusing on not only the individuals, but how they transmit values down to the next generation and how they've served our country.
And Abigail, his wife, is almost as famous as he is.
Oh, she is such a wonderful person. We just, the foundation just had a virtual book club. Just recently, we started off in September, and we had a book that's titled The Unexpected Abigail Adams, A Woman Not Apt to Be Intimidated by John Smith. And you are right. She is smart. She is self-educated. She's an intellectual peer of her husband's. She was basically served as his chief of staff when he was president. When she was not with him, he would write to her longingly, please come, I need you. And she was an entrepreneur, so she was a woman very ahead of her time who understood that forming our nation, this new nation, was a family project that required great sacrifice from their family.
It's so funny because right when we started talking, my eyes just happened to gloss over my bookshelves, and they landed right on this big book, The Political Writings of John Adams, which I thought was very coincidental. And look, this is a guy who exerted massive influence in America's politics and founding governance. He was the one that actually encouraged Jefferson to take a stab at the Declaration of Independence, correct?
Oh, you're exactly right. So here's, so John Adams, who's often overlooked because, look, he came behind George Washington, who is the father of our country and did serve as our commanding general. And he's right in front of Thomas Jefferson, who was this very debonair, plantation owner who did write the Declaration of Independence. But to your point, Adams is the one that nominated Washington to be commander-in-chief at the Second Continental Congress. And he was also the one that suggested Thomas Jefferson write the Declaration of Independence. So, and then when the Declaration came back, he was the most vocal debater in favor of declaring our independence. So it's very easy for me to argue. I'm glad to argue with anyone about, yes, could we possibly have been formed without him? But possibly, but not in the way and not in the time in which we were. He was vastly influential, even in the 1760s, writing about thoughts on government, about how maybe 3 branches of government would be the right way to go.
Talk a little bit about the influence his faith had on his political views, because that really is the founding greatness of America, the link between faith and freedom.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you brought that up. He was very faithful. His wife was very faithful. You can tell in their writings, and we are so lucky to have thousands of letters, both between the two of them, but also to other people. And you can see their faith in the letters that they wrote to one another and to other people. They knew, it's so, to me, it's like, you look back and it looks like it's all going to work out, right? Like, we're 250 years later, we're on the way up to the Declaration of Independence, and of course we're going to have freedom. But they did not know that. They didn't know the outcome, right? And so faith was incredibly important to them during that time because they had to have faith to move forward. They had to have faith to actually speak out against the British government, which was the most powerful government in the world. And then they had to have faith to actually sign the Declaration of Independence, which he knew would be his death sentence if they were not successful. So, they were a family that really focused on, I would probably say in order, God, nation, and then family, because they were so focused on making sure that we could form a new nation.
Wow. And, it comes at such a critical time in America, our 250th. And also, it's being reported, too, that a lot of schools are turning back to regular civics in their high schools, teaching the greatness of the Founding Fathers, which I'm sure that you must find very inspirational.
Absolutely. We found, I've been involved with this effort about a year and a half roughly, and it's really picked up steam because, to your point, because of the 250th, people are very interested in the Founding Fathers, the Founding Mothers. How did this happen? But, it's so interesting. If you look at the family, and I'm going to take John Quincy as an example. John Quincy was born in the colonies under British rule. He then watched the Battle of Bunker Hill with his mother from afar. He then served with his father overseas. He became Secretary of State. He then served as president, and then served 17 years in the Congress, where he argued against slavery every day. And he was known in the Congress as the hellhound of slavery because he was so against it. What's interesting is he actually overlapped with Abraham Lincoln for 3.5 months. So this family had an enormous, right? If you think about the time frame from being born under British rule to serving with Abraham Lincoln, this family had an enormous impact on our nation.
Wow. When you put it that way, that's something to think on. That's interesting. And I wonder if you can explain what the heck happened to Massachusetts, specifically Boston. And I'm from there, so I can speak critically of firsthand leftist leaners there are nut jobs. What happened? This used to be the focal point of individual God-given freedom, and it's turned down this path of socialism. What's going on there?
That is a great question. I might have to let you answer that since I'm still focused a little bit about 250 years back. What I can tell you, which is probably part of it, is these are a fiercely independent people, and I think in some cases, to your point, they'd rather be independent with whatever thoughts they have than with everything else. But we're excited because this memorial will give us a chance to really showcase. The thought is we'd have something that would be New England in terms of architecture, so something that would reflect both John and Abigail and their heritage.
It's just funny their heritage is in Massachusetts and the left turn that state has taken. Your vision for the memorial, will it include text that talks about the history, or is it simply a statue? Describe what you vision.
That's a great question. So we've actually made a lot of progress this year. We have legislation that's come out of committee and the House of Representatives that would actually give us a specific location. And let me tell you where that location is, because I think it's very exciting. And it informs what you would then do, right? So obviously whatever we do will have to fit within the location that we have. So this location would be just south of the White House on the east side in President's Park South, where there is currently a one-story refreshment pavilion that is not in use, that has been surrounded by parade fencing. So we have this now. We currently have this ugly old building that is not being used, surrounded by this parade fencing, that we would like to turn that area into the Adams Memorial. And currently, kind of our working vision is something that would reflect them again, something like maybe a library and a garden, or something that's very, it's not going to be huge like the Washington Memorial. It's not going to be huge like the Jefferson, but something that would allow people to really understand their impact from New England, but also, to your point, their words. So, our partners include the Massachusetts Historical Society. We'll definitely have some key phrases and quotes from all of the family members that we're honoring. And one of them that I love from John Quincy is the reminder to your question earlier about faith, is John Quincy, when asked, why do you continually fight against slavery? His response was, duty is ours, results are God's. So I do think we'll have the chance to be able to have, several quotes like that are really meaningful, that remind us of what they did and how they approached life.
What kind of resistance or pushback or challenges, I guess might be a better word, are you facing with bringing forth this to reality?
I really appreciate that question. It's interesting. I've yet to meet anyone, as you mentioned earlier, like, well, why don't we have one, right? So people that we talk to, no one said, gosh, John Adams and Abigail, they don't deserve anything. They've done nothing for us, right? That's never been said. So really, it's more just getting it in front of people right? Making sure they're aware of it, providing, because there is, the good thing about the 250th is it does give us, right, a reason to push forward time-wise. But since they're not currently alive, and since it has been 250 years, our biggest thing is that other distractions. So we're very, like I said, we're very happy with the progress in the movement and the Congress, and we're really looking forward to making even more progress next year.
Is it a done deal, you think?
No, nothing's done till it's done, as we know from right now. But it has been taken out of committee. It should be up for vote, later this year, and then we'll move over to the Senate. And again, we've gotten bipartisan support, which is extremely important. This is a bipartisan commission. This is a bipartisan effort. And we do want this to make sure that we complete this memorial in such a way that Americans can go to Washington, see the impact of the Adams, and really be, if you look at what they went through and everything they sacrificed, it gives us, at least it gives me, hope for today as well.
And just in the last couple minutes, I'm sure during your research, you've stumbled across historical facts about the Adams family that aren't very well known. Anything spring to mind?
There are a lot. To me, one of the most interesting is, again, I'm going to refer back to Abigail in the book, The Unexpected Abigail Adams, is how much of an entrepreneur she was. I kind of knew that the Adams didn't come from a lot of money. They weren't the Washingtons, they weren't the Jeffersons, but John was a circuit lawyer, so he was actually working at the circuit. But when he served in the Continental Congress, she had to make the money so that they could survive. And she not only ran the farm, but she also figured out ways to invest in different things. She owned land at a time when married women weren't supposed to own land. She invested in stocks. She resold items. She was just this incredibly resourceful woman who made John Adams able to actually go and do what he was going to do. And she was really interesting. And the other thing that I'll say about the Adams family is that she was also a very, very tough mother. Some of her letters to John Quincy are a bit, let's just say, when he's young, I'd rather you jump off the ship than embarrass your family, right? I mean, so she was just she was a tough woman.
So, one of the things I notice out there, there are a lot of quotes that float around online that are attributed to founding fathers. That if you dig a little deeper, you find out that they never said those words. Is there anything that you found that is popularly quoted or attributed to anyone in the Adams family that is just it's so wrong?
I haven't found that, but I found something similar, which I think, and my guess is all the listeners have heard the quote, "Remember the ladies," which she did write to John Adams.
Yes.
And that is a real quote. But what isn't well known was his response, which was basically he gave her the brush off. So that is something we don't talk about very much. But then again, I think she knew that he was going to do that. I think she wrote him that quote anyway, regardless. In the context of the time, that push from her was less about rights in terms of voting rights is what we think about nowadays, 250 years later. But really, I think what she was looking at that time was, women not only could not own property if they were married or other things, but also legally there was no recourse if there was violence in the family. And so she was trying to remind him that women were very much, in a different area, but he did not respond. He was worried about other things. Let's put it that way.
Did they know how consequential they were going to be? How important they were going to be? So the words they wrote at the time, did they envision 100, 200 years down the road, people reading them?
I think they did because for two reasons. One is, they did and they didn't. John, I think, knew because he on purpose saved his letters, and not only did he save the letters that he received, but he had a book where he'd write down the letters that he sent out, right? He'd copy them over, and that's a lot of work unless you're pretty sure that those words are going to be useful to somebody later on. So he was, I think, aware of where he was in history. I think for her, I think she was aware, but she was also very much aware of the time that they were in was not of their choosing. Okay, and I'm going to read you a quote from her that she wrote to her son, John Quincy. And she says, "There are times in which a genius would wish to live. It is not in the still calm of life or the repose of a Pacific station that great characters are formed. Great necessities call out great virtues." So I think she was very aware that they were in an unusual time, which also meant they had to do unusual things.
Wow, this was a fascinating discussion, and the website is theadamsmemorial.org, correct?
Absolutely, and please, I would love for your listeners to go there to check us out. We do have monthly virtual book clubs, which is very interesting. We're reading about John Quincy next, and obviously there are ways to donate and follow on social media as well.
Okay, so are the book clubs virtual or are they in person?
They are virtual because this is a national project. So this coming month in October, we're going to be reading John Quincy Adams, which was a book that's relatively new by Randall Woods out of Arkansas. It's a very well-written book. And I knew a pretty good bit about John and Abigail. I did not know as much about John Quincy Adams when I started this project. And the more I get to know him, the more fascinated I am with him. He's just a very interesting person.
Oh, okay. So it's not too late for people to jump aboard that one, right? You said it.
Absolutely not. You can go to the website, join our newsletter, and then join the book club. It's just fun to learn. To your point earlier about the importance of learning about our founding families. It's interesting to learn what they went through and to try to understand what made them tick.
Jackie Cushman, what a great job you have. It must be so much fun.
Fascinating. I've learned a lot, which is always great.
Thank you so much for your time on Bold and Blunt. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be on this. Thank you so much.
And that's another Bold and Blunt. Remember, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available.